I walked into my sister's birthday party expecting the usual warmth of family and the scent of freshly baked cake. I imagined laughter, chatter, and the glow of candles reflecting in everyone's eyes. Instead, I felt invisible. I hovered near the edge of the room, trying to smile while watching everyone admire her. My sister sparkled under the attention, effortlessly drawing compliments and praise. Then Mom pulled me aside, her voice quiet but sharp. "She's the daughter I'm proud of." I froze. Pride had never been associated with me, not even once. My chest tightened, my stomach churned, and I felt a sinking dread. But what came next shocked me even more. Mom handed me an envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a bill, $3,450. My mind couldn't process it at first. Confusion, disbelief, and a deep sense of betrayal hit me all at once. How could a birthday, something meant to celebrate joy, turn into a personal financial nightmare? My sister smiled innocently, oblivious to the storm unfolding just behind her eyes. I swallowed my anger, tried to steady my breathing, and wondered if I had misheard, if this was some cruel joke. The room blurred around me. The music, the laughter, the chatter, they became white noise. All I could feel was the weight of that envelope pressing against my chest, suffocating, heavy with meaning. I realized in that moment that my life had just shifted, but the full scope of the betrayal was still hidden from me. I stared at the bill, heart racing, and asked myself, why me? All my life, I had been the quiet one, the shadow that hovered behind my sister's spotlight. While she collected trophies, awards, and applause, I learned to shrink. School recognition, piano recitals, spelling bees. Mom's pride was always reserved for her. I mastered the art of smiling when she received praise, hiding the sting behind a polite nod, swallowing the ache in my chest. Dad tried to balance things, offering small words of encouragement, but he always fell silent when Mom's favoritism became too obvious. Love in our family often came packaged in money, gifts, or verbal praise, and I often received none. I became self-reliant early, handling disappointment quietly, convincing myself that independence was enough. Still, deep down, I craved acknowledgement, even if it was just a simple nod. Seeing my sister celebrated at that party while I held a financial burden exposed a pattern I had tolerated but never confronted. The envelope in my hands wasn't just money, it was a statement of hierarchy, a family code I had been forced to obey without question. Memories flashed before me, every time I was overlooked, every achievement ignored, every effort unnoticed. The injustice built up like a weight, pressing me toward a moment I wasn't sure I could handle. The party continued around me, candles flickering as laughter and chatter swirled in a warm, golden haze. My sister stood at the center of it all, radiant, smiling at every compliment and soaking in the admiration like sunlight. I felt trapped in a surreal bubble, the envelope heavy and suffocating in my hand. Friends and relatives commented on her dress, praised her hair, and even complimented her cake choices, while I remained invisible, a background fixture no one bothered to notice. I forced a smile, careful to appear gracious, but beneath it simmered a quiet anger that threatened to boil over. I remembered the thoughtful gift I had spent hours earning extra money to afford, and it felt like a slap in the face that it had been completely overshadowed. Mom hovered nearby, her attention glued entirely to my sister, and it hit me that she had orchestrated every single detail. The financial jab now made sense. It wasn't just neglect, it was a calculated, subtle punishment. I wanted to scream, to confront her right there in front of everyone, but something inside held me back. The risk of ruining the party, of creating a family scandal, kept my lips sealed. Instead, I stayed quiet, raising my glass in a fake toast, while my mind raced, spinning with ideas for how to prove I deserved respect, how to turn this humiliation into something I could use to my advantage. Later that evening, I found myself alone in my room, the envelope lying on my desk like a weight I couldn't shake. I stared at the $3,450 bill again, line by line, letting the reality sink in. Decorations, catering, gifts, entertainment, it all screamed entitlement, a meticulous list of expenses designed to assert control. These numbers weren't just about money, they were a message, a reminder from Mom about who mattered most in our family hierarchy. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I pulled out my calculator and began mapping my budget, thinking through the stress this would create. How was I supposed to pay this without sinking my own finances? Anxiety clawed at me, sharp and relentless, but underneath it, anger sharpened like a blade. Patterns I had previously ignored became painfully clear. Mom measured love in money, in acknowledgement, in the way she elevated one child above another. The realization hit me bitterly. My sister had been groomed for attention, and I had been trained for silent submission. But submission had a limit, and I felt mine stretching to the breaking point. I needed a plan, a way to reclaim my dignity, to stop quietly absorbing favoritism and financial manipulation. I couldn't undo the party, couldn't erase the humiliation, but I could prepare my counterstrike, and it would require patience, precision, and courage I wasn't sure I fully possessed yet. I decided it was finally time to act. I took a deep breath, sat down with a notebook, and carefully created a budget that accounted for my finances and the unreasonable demands being placed on me. Then, I gathered the evidence I had meticulously collected over the past weeks and prepared to present it to Mom and Dad. I framed it as a concern, not an accusation, speaking calmly and deliberately. I laid out every unfair charge, every expectation driven by favoritism, and the $3,450 bill that had sparked this journey. Mom's reaction was immediate. Her smile faltered, eyes widening slightly, while Dad remained quiet, watching the truth unfold before him. I drew a clear boundary. I would not cover unjust expenses, and I deserved recognition for my contributions and sacrifices. A strange mix of fear and empowerment washed over me. Standing up to Mom felt like stepping into uncharted territory. My sister watched silently, confused but attentive, as I articulated my limits. This boundary was about more than money. It was my dignity, a declaration that I would no longer be invisible. I braced myself for resistance, fully aware that this conversation could reshape our family dynamics forever. Mom's next words could either acknowledge me, or shatter me completely. Mom's reaction was telling. She hesitated at first, her eyes darting between me and Dad, clearly grappling with the weight of what I had just presented. Then, grudgingly, she apologized for the imbalance, acknowledging, at least partially, that her favoritism had tangible consequences. Dad stayed quiet but supportive, ensuring my sister understood the lesson without feeling humiliated. Slowly, the family began to adjust. Future celebrations were planned with fairness in mind, and the expectation that I would cover indulgent expenses vanished entirely. Even my sister started noticing the subtle ways Mom had favored her over the years, which sparked quiet conversations about fairness and recognition. The $3,450 was settled through a compromise, but the larger victory lay in the shift of family dynamics. Mom's attempts to control through money had backfired, proving the power of setting clear boundaries and providing evidence. Karma showed itself in unexpected ways. Favoritism came with costs, both emotional and financial. My sense of justice and empowerment outweighed the humiliation I initially felt, proving that standing up to manipulation could reshape long-standing family patterns. But the final confrontation was still ahead. Weeks later, we all sat down together in the living room, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. I took a deep breath and decided it was time to address the core of the issue. I explained how Mom's favoritism had affected me over the years, how the $3,450 bill was not just money but a symbol of a deeper, ongoing pattern, and how I needed respect and acknowledgement, not simply financial responsibility. Mom listened, defensive at first, her posture rigid and her eyes guarded, but gradually her expression softened as she reflected on what I was saying. My sister, sitting quietly beside her, offered a small but genuine apology for her oblivious role, admitting she hadn't realized how her actions had hurt me. The tension in the room was palpable, yet honest dialogue began to replace the weight of unspoken resentment. I wasn't seeking to humiliate anyone. I wanted clarity and equality. By articulating my feelings, presenting proof, and asserting boundaries firmly but calmly, I could feel the dynamics in the room shifting. Mom finally acknowledged the imbalance and promised to be more conscious of favoritism in the future. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. I felt lighter, empowered, and seen, finally recognized as more than just a shadow in my own family. I realized respect had been my birthright, not a privilege. This experience taught me that standing up to manipulation isn't just about money, it's about self-respect. Families can unintentionally, or even intentionally, favor one member over another, and silence often becomes a tool that empowers imbalance. I learned that evidence, patience, and clear boundaries are not weapons, they are tools to protect your dignity and assert fairness. Speaking up may feel uncomfortable, but it creates the possibility for long-term change. Favoritism may seem personal, but confronting it with honesty can restore both fairness and self-worth. As I reflect on that day, I can't help but wonder how many people silently carry similar burdens, convinced they are powerless to change anything. My journey shows that empowerment comes not from anger, but from preparation, clarity, and courage. The $3,450 bill was merely a catalyst, exposing systemic favoritism, but addressing it thoughtfully reshaped my family dynamics forever. I want you to ask yourself, are you silently carrying unfair burdens, and what steps could you take to reclaim your dignity before life hands you another bill you never asked for? The question is, will you speak up when it matters most?